This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
But talking about perfection, there is a carbohydrate we haven't spoken about for a while on this podcast, only once in a while we talk about. Declan Rice is closing into an Arsenal transfer according to pretty reliable sources. £100 million potential with add-ons and stuff. I think it'll be closer to 92 initially. And it looks like, my friends, it's kind of happening. It's nearly happening. We're nearly there. I'm not going to say it's happening just yet because you know how it works, transfers. You never quite know what is around the corner. But Declan Rice is closing into an Arsenal transfer, George. The reality, or the dream, is nearly a reality. But my question to you is, with the reported price tag of £100 million, record-breaking offer, one of the Premier League record signings as well, near and thereabouts, how is he worth that money, and why is he worth that money?
I mean, when you look at what he could offer you, I asked like three simple questions. Again, is he versatile to multiple roles? Like, are you buying somebody, and not a knock, but are you buying a Zinchenko, who for us plays a very specific role? Not really. You're buying a very versatile player. Again, for me, it's the long-term six or anchor position. That's what I see as Declan Rice's best position personally. But does he have versatility to be more of a carrier and impact further up the pitch? Of course he does. So you're not buying a player that only fits one system or one coach, by the way. And ultimately, I think people confuse me as an optimist. I really am a pessimist. Like, I look at it as a case of, you're spending £100 million or breaking your transfer record. Can Declan Rice work with any coach in the world? Not just system-wise, but philosophy-wise? In my opinion, he can. He can do the positional system. He can do a more defensive system. So I look at it as a future-proofing. When you buy that type of player, can he work if your coach leaves? Can he work if somebody else in the 11 gets really injured and you need to force him a little bit higher? I look at Ben White and how brilliant his versatility has been for us. Nobody talks about the $50 million price tag, which was very pricey at the time for a center back, because he's not just a center back. He's been able to be an excellent right back for us. So that's one thing with Declan. Then I ask, of course, do you have two contract cycles? For me, when you hit the £100 million mark, I am not a fan of spending that on prime 28, 29-year-old players, because that means I'm only buying you for 2 to 3 seasons. With Declan, I'm buying you for a decade. And, his type of midfielder will last well, and he can move back. He's already shown potential in terms of coming up as a center back. There's potential for him in his career, with maybe he loses a little bit more mobility to move further back. So again, 2 contract cycles, perfect. And then the last criteria that I always ask is, are you top 3 in your position in the world? And for me, Declan Rice fits that category. Certainly is an argument for many people. I look at anchors. Who is better in the world right now? Rodri is competition right now. Thomas Partey, again, I know people don't want to love, kind of the fitness, but, in the league, he has been one of the best DMs in the league. Who else kind of rates? Casemiro, which again, I think is really disingenuous, but I'll put it out there to be fair. But who is better than Declan Rice over Rodri, Partey? I'm not even going to put Casemiro because that's really rude, but who else in the world deserves to be in those conversations ultimately? I'm looking at maybe Tchouaméni at Real Madrid, who is similarly very raw, hasn't had the same performance consistency as Declan Rice. So when you ask these questions about £100 million, you need those things answered for me. And then finally, I also ask, does he change things not just on the pitch, but off the pitch? What do they do? When you reach £100 million, you need to change the trajectory of a club, right? You're talking superstar status, you are. And I think part of the issue that a lot of people have is when you spend this kind of money on a quote-unquote DM, it's not an attacking signing, and it's not getting you the goals. What I look at is you're buying a player that guarantees your team the ability to put their attackers in the final third and stay there. That is what gets me so excited, because I believe that the modern football kind of way is transition control. It's about committing less bodies back, more bodies forward. More people are going to have low blocks to combat this kind of positional system that people are doing. And in order to do that, you need to keep your attackers in the final third. And who in the world right now defensively is better than Declan Rice at controlling transitions or big spaces? There is no one. That is his special sauce. That is his superpower. And so for me, when I look forward to modern football, is that changing? No. In fact, it's getting even more in demand. And Pep has shown it this year. What does he change his system to? Adding transition control in the center of the pitch. So for me, it's a forward-thinking signing. As a player, couldn't speak more highly. I've loved him for 2 to 3 years now. I can't believe it's finally happening. And I'll end on the leadership potential. Look, guys, I know it's a soft factor that people don't want to talk about, but you're talking about potentially the future England captain. How do I think that matters in terms of referees in this league? How do I think that matters in terms of the broad perception in this league? It matters. I know people don't want to talk about it, but it does matter having an English spine. And by the way, it's not just Declan. It's Ben White. It's Ramsdale. It's Declan Rice in total. Like, we have done this. Bukayo Saka. It's a calculated spine that we are developing. Look, Manchester United really relied on that kind of dominance in their greatest times, really building a spine of domestic talents. And I just think getting probably the poster boy for that, a very big character, needed to replace a big character in Xhaka leaving. And I think we've done that. And we've also done it in an availability sense. So we're not losing somebody that won't be available. When you buy £100 million, you're looking at a player that has consistently provided output and is available for 38 games a season. Declan, if anything, has been overworked. He's done that in spades. So, yeah, I don't see a con. Let me put it to you that way. I could probably ask you guys the question. Could you give me a reason he isn't worth £100 million? Because I could give you 12 he is.
Okay, I don't think I will, because I'm not trying to get into an argument with George, because I'll probably lose that about Declan Rice. But I think it does feel a little bit surreal. I know it's not quite done yet, but because it's how close it is, it feels a bit mad. Because this time last year, if I told George specifically we signed Declan Rice, I think he would have popped the champagne bottle there and there, because it just one of those signings that you didn't quite think Arsenal could make happen, because it wasn't a reality last year. But now, when you've got the Champions League football, when you've got the owners willing to back Mikel Arteta massively and given the go ahead, I think there's more of a not just a profile on the pitch and how you can elevate Arsenal. It's a statement of intent. I think George says it often, how often do Arsenal move this early and get a move like this done? And it is Arsenal saying to the entire market, the entire world actually, that we are the real deal here. We're not trying to be like Tottenham were in 2016, 17, or Liverpool before that, when they fought for a title, fell short, and then they sold Suarez, or they didn't invest in terms of Spurs into the right signings. Arsenal are being serious. Alex, what do you make of the Arsenal owners backing Arteta and the statement that Rice would be?
It's huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge. And I think the thing that maybe is most exciting is how a transfer should answer a question, should answer ultimately, it's like, we've got a problem. How do we address that? And then I think you should always look internally and see, is there a growth potential from someone, in the squad? Is there someone in the academy that can do that? And if not, let's look to the market. Our question this summer is, how do we make up those points to Man City? How do we concede less goals? How do we control those handful of games that we didn't control this season? How do we add more depth, more strength in depth? And Declan Rice answers all of those questions emphatically. And that's the key part. It's like, we've answered those questions before in previous windows with players. We all knew we needed a centre-back in 2021. And we went out and got Ben White. Now, Ben White is a very good player. Very, very good player, and I think has even more growth potential. But no one can look me in the eye and say that was an emphatic answer. It was we think this guy can be the answer moving forward. In a couple of years' time, he's going to develop. We needed a left-sided centre-back. We didn't go out and get, let's say we needed a centre-back. We didn't go out and get De Ligt as this is the guy. We didn't go out and get Marquinhos from PSG. We went we'll go and get a Gabriel or whatever. We've answered questions in a way that's like, yeah, we're kind of, slightly hedging our bets. This is, and I won't use a phrase, but putting something on the table. Let's say that, and you know what I'm talking about. This is putting our something on the table. And this is saying, we are going out and we are getting the best in class. That's it. That's what we're doing. If you look at, I looked at it statistically yesterday for a video on the Different Knock blog. But I looked at it yesterday statistically, and I looked at Rice in terms of how he profiles up against Rodri and Partey, as George was talking about a little earlier. It's scary how close he is to a Rodri. He's 2.5 years his junior. He's so close. He's literally this far. And the thing is, the only real thing that's come up is about his passing, in terms of passes completed and volume of passing. But you can't divorce that from the fact that West Ham scored literally less than half the amount of goals that Arsenal did, 42 goals to our 88 goals. And also he's in a team where he is invited a bit more to play long. Once he gets in a team where there's a structure, once he gets in a team where he's not expected to be the guy in every single phase of play, once he's in a team where he's given a very specific job, his superpower is get the ball back. And there is literally no one in world football, I would argue, maybe Rodri, who is as good at who is as good as Declan Rice in terms of his anticipation, in terms of his duel winning, in terms of his, and George mentioned it earlier, transition control. We conceded goals. I had a look at this recently. The two main categories of goals that we conceded last season were down our left-hand side and were through transitions. If we can sort with Declan Rice, who has a slightly left-sided bias, and if we can sort that transition control, where Declan Rice, I would say, reduces half of those, we can start, and also in terms of what George was saying earlier about pushing players further forward, that ability to take further risks in other areas because you've got a Declan Rice who can support you. We're looking at Man City possession totals, we're looking at Man City goal totals, and we're looking at Man City levels of performance and no dip. So and we're lifting the cup. So it answers the question the most emphatically it could. It's like breaking up with an ex and being like, oh, you'll never get better than me, and then going out and getting Kim Kardashian. It's like you can't, if that's what you're into, not personally, but in terms of the kind of that sort of that idea, that's what it is. So chapeau to the club. It isn't done.
It's not done yet. It's not done yet. But when it is done, I'm getting that shirt straight away. I'll be honest, I am. But I think what this does mean, though, is if he is going to be a long-term number 6, we have got a player whose future is a bit uncertain. It's a bit of a surprise, but Thomas Partey is out of contract in 2025. There's been no talks of a brand new deal. Reports about Saudi Arabia, reports about Serie A. There's been quite a few different reports linking Partey with a move away. I don't think he'll leave next summer, or this summer, sorry. I think he will stay for sure. But, George, do you still think he has a future in his Arsenal team going into the future?
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.